Fratoni. All right, there we go. So this session is the 21st Century Family Engagement Ecosystem presented by Joseph Fratoni. Fratoni has 30 plus years experience improving the communication and coordination of people in order to get things accomplished. He is the driving force behind One Green Apple's licensed protected intellectual property and has been recognized as a leader in the area of quantifying family engagement and its effect on student performance. Over the past decade, Mr. Fratoni has spent countless hours working with educators, parents, and policy leaders throughout the United States. This experience has helped him to understand the commonality of issues regarding family engagement, as well as the subtle nuances specific to regions, groups, and constituencies. And with that, I'll turn it over to you, Mr. Fratoni.
Great. Well, thank you, Sherry. I really appreciate that. Obviously, what we're talking about is the 21st century.
Why is my thing not working?
Pardon? Somebody is turning off their mic, maybe. But anyway, about the 21st century family engagement ecosystem. And with that, let me just kind of start about, see that this goes. Let me just tell you a little bit about One Green Apple. Our mission is to strengthen the parent's voice in the education of their child and measure the resulting students' achievement and improvement. The idea being is that we're very metric based. I'm very analytical. I'm not here to tell parent coordinators and all you guys and women who have been in the trenches for so long and everything else, how to do your job. You already know that. What I'm really looking about and what we're really going to be talking about is the bigger picture and how do we evolve this so that we actually get more things accomplished, I guess is the best way to do that. And one of the best ways I think to do is just very quickly is to kind of recap what I call the business side of education, and the value of family engagement, because I think sometimes we don't really fully appreciate where family engagement fits into the big picture. And it's not only that you might not appreciate this, it may also be within your entire district and community. Okay. So here's how a superintendent has to look at the the business, if you will, of looking at schools. Basically, we need money. Healthy cash flows allow for greater flexibility, which allows for better programs, which then instill more students, which then helps with the cash flow. So in order to do this, we need to maximize all our resources and make sure that we keep things going. Number one is student retention. Because then you have a steady budget, you know exactly where you're at, if you will. And the keys to keeping that come down to really two things. Number one, student performance, because that's how districts are measured in every which way, if you will, and parent satisfaction, that they're happy with what's going on and where things are at. They do this through something called performance-based management, which is basically managing the performance, which is exactly what it says, by analyzing data and having the data to be able to look at this. This is why you see all these concepts about testing and everything else about student performance. It's tied to financial viability of the school district at will. And if we look further, more money is spent at the at-risk student. That's where we need to focus on that. We use data to drive instruction, which drives achievement, which then helps the school district overall. However, one of the things is family engagement is really, in the grand scheme of things, considered only a tool to improve performance. One of the problems is we don't have as many metrics or analytics as we need to really make it viable. You can't manage, how do you measure family engagement? If you can't manage what you can't measure, if it's not measurable, it's not fundable. And that becomes an issue because family engagement is way more important than just looking at the child. In order to do this properly, everybody needs to get the information they need to support student success. Parents need to see information that we really don't give them, and that teachers are afraid, for lack of a better expression, to give them because they're afraid of the pushback. But if we do give this information, it promotes role-based responsibility, and it also helps develop accountability, which is really important to understand where things are at. In order to know where there are problems, you need to see where things are existing so that you can make a baseline to adjust where you need to be, if you will. So how did we get here? Basically, the way I look at this is that In most districts, family engagement is underutilized. We all know parent involvement is important in a child's success. Teacher effectiveness is compromised by the lack of family engagement. But even if the parent of the non-risk child, of the at-risk child wants to help, many times they don't know how. They don't have the skill set. They don't have the technology. They were at risk themselves. How do we, they come from a different culture. Life is really hard. How do we break this systemic cultural issue that develops that what's now been called so many times the achievement gap, but is even greater than that? How do we really make this, change? And if you think about it, over the past, how many times have you heard the system's broken and we can't keep throwing money at the problem? We can't keep throwing, the system's broken, we can't keep throwing money at the problem. Smaller class sizes, better trained teachers, better facilities, even school choice have not delivered on the promise or the investment over the past 40 years. Something must have changed. And we believe in One Green Apple, we believe this is family engagement. So let's look at how does this all kind of develop. Most of our engagement has all been developed under a leave it to Beaver mentality. And this is how people see it. Beaver has a problem and Miss Landers calls up Mrs. Cleaver, who goes out in the yard and talks to Ward. And in 30 minutes, things are all resolved and we learned a lesson as well as Beaver. So what's wrong with this picture? Well, number one, Miss Landers is busy, busier than she's ever been at all. Mrs. Cleaver's traded in her pearls and she's working full time. More and more, Mr. and Mrs. Cleaver don't even speak the same language as Miss Landers. And in most of the families, Mr. Cleaver is not even there. Systems are broken. The nuclear family doesn't really exist. Yolanda Anderson, I remember talking to her. She was prior to Regina Thurman, had given me a statistic about South Carolina that said 31% of all households in South Carolina are led by a single mother, and another 7% were led by a single father. That means close to 40% of the families in South Carolina do not fit into the quote nuclear family. And that's a problem. We need to address these issues, obviously, that you're familiar with this. It's a lot greater challenge, but it has an even bigger effect because our communities are only as strong as our families are. And our kids do not leave where they grew up. And if they are better educated, the community grows as well. In fact, at Pepperdine University, a conservative think tank has even said opportunities for families, including single parent and struggling families, to genuinely participate in their child's education provides the only means by which communities and lives can be rebuilt. Children settle on the way to success in their jobs and more importantly, in their community. I bring this up to show that there is a lot more importance to this than just worrying about or thinking about at the granular level each student. In the grand big picture, something has to change if we're going to have a greater impact. At the same time, and this is coming from the National Association for Family, School, and Community Engagement, these are what their findings are. Number one, when we talk about school reform, no one brings up family engagement as much. And they do it now, and now it's kind of polarized and maybe going in the wrong direction. But professionals are also isolated. Parent coordinators and the entire parent coordination concept are kind of pushed to the side from the difference between just the teacher-parent relationship. And I think that should be turned around to the parent-teacher partnership, which we'll talk about further. Few organizations give family engagement the priority it exists. And I will venture to say, go out to your school district, go out to the website of your school district. And at the top, see where it says family engagement. If family engagement is so important, why isn't it there? Why isn't it easier to get to who they need to speak to? That is a key to kind of look at that. And a lot of studies have said educators, the teachers, are really unprepared to engage families. Dr. Anderson brought up a lot of good points about how teachers aren't able to handle certain things and they need more professional development. Somebody made the comment in that says, this should be shown to the teachers. Parent coordinators should be showing this to the teachers. And we'll talk further about that later on. A strong body of research shows that family engagement matters. However, we all know what we're supposed to be doing, but we know it's really, really expensive. So that's not what we spend our money on. Conventional methods take too much time, energy, in cost. In fact, because it's not measurable, not enough money goes to it other than basically Title I funds. And this is a study, coming from the National Center for Education Statistics and Title I, that out of the average of a $14,400 per school year spent on a K-12 student, less than $10 is spent in family engagement. That makes absolutely no sense. So you know why we don't get much impact? There's not enough funds in here. Why aren't there enough funds in there? Because there's no metrics to understand how valuable this job is. So how do we change that? Well, first of all, let's look at what's been going on. The past few years have been so tragic. I'm only going to spend one slide on this, but basically plans, one of the lessons we've learned, plans can be dashed quickly, things change and everybody is overwhelmed. The teachers, administrators, and families in particular. And because of this, we're seeing greater disparities in achievement gap that can't be ignored. We're never going back to the way it was. And do we really want to go back to the way it was? Some of the lessons we've learned from this is, number one, the role of families in education is increasing. It is more noticeable. There is additional funds being available for this, both through ESSER, and if you're familiar with ESSA and the 1%, lots of this stuff, which also means that parent coordinators can have a greater impact if the position is redrawn structurally in order to make these things work. Everyone knows we've got these greater challenges. How are we going to do all this extra work? And from a parent coordinator standpoint, how do we make the most of our time? We're limited on that. We're responsible for all our families, but yet if we spend it where we needed the most and we ignore others, it's going to hurt our performance evaluation. How do we spread our performance? How do we make this work? And I kind of bring up very quickly, I'm sure a lot of people here have heard about the argument between equality and equity. And we've all seen this picture too, I'm sure. And if not, I'll explain it very, very quickly, of the soap boxes being resources. And if we spread it properly, equally, not everybody is served properly. But if we look at to where everyone's at in a different way, we're able to give everyone the opportunity of a level playing field to grow. And that's really the key, is giving everybody the opportunity, obviously, to learn. So how do we do this? The key is finding the right balance that promotes the most benefit, not only to the community, but to yourself. How do we maximize getting things done? And there's one way that I think is if we can make it so cost effective across the board and show that, that's how you get the resources, and that's what we need to do. If there's any questions, feel free to throw them in chat and I will kind of go in there. So at One Green Apple, we kind of went beyond the research and we started looking at what we call strengthening the parent-teacher partnership. If a parent has a problem, they don't go to the parent coordinator first. They're going to the teacher. That's where the issues are, right? And really, we all talk about that, but we look at that in order to make that partnership work, we need to build this on 4 pillars. Number one is moving parents up what we call, or the parent engagement curve. And I'll spend a little bit more time on that, but basically the parent engagement curve is moving parents along the way so that they're all at different levels to really where they become an effective partner. We also have to elevate the role of the parent as a partner, which is really a requirement both in ESSA and everywhere else. But how do we do this? The teachers and the schools have more data than the parents. How do we get the parents the information they need without, issues with FERPA, if you will, and every other darn thing? We need building trust and communications, stuff that we can validate and see and where this is going. And probably the biggest key is measuring and correlating that engagement to achievement. And that achievement can be both student performance, attendance, et cetera. And if we can have those metrics, then we can start restructuring this entire family engagement program to make it much more successful and to show where we need to go with this. So this is where I'm talking about the parent engagement curve. Right now, if you look at the far lower hand corner, there's nothing there. Teachers send things home one way, there's an information. Parents have questions, they send things back, and it's bi-directional. And most parent communication systems kind of stop here, but here's where the key is. We talk past each other. Teachers use a different language than the parents, the parents have other issues and it's not really being seen. But if we could get to the point where they can understand each other, that the teacher can see the insights from home, what's going on with this child, at the same time that the parent can see their child in context the way the teachers see them. You know, my Johnny is an angel. Yes, but I have a classroom of 20 angels, you know. Then we can have a dialogue. And if that dialogue happens, well, then we can really start collaborating and just design really simple little tweaks, which we call designing strategy, that eventually goes to, you know, getting feedback from what we did. And then we have the traditional feedback loop where we hear something back, we assess what we do, we come up with new ideas, and then we execute those, and then we assess it again. And when you have that loop, you've really gotten to the point where you're able to develop what we would call a real parent-teacher partnership. And it's how the idea is to move parents up that path. How do we get there? Well, what does a parent look like when they're engaged? And it's almost, as I go down these questions, they get more and more engaged. Number one is, how is my child doing? That they find that education is important in their lives, that they want their child to succeed. Number two, how are they doing? How's my child doing according to their abilities? You know, my expectations. I know my child. I'm better at some, less than others. And that's really an important thing to be able to see. Whoops, went back there. Then we start thinking, how's my child doing? How does it fit in with the rest of the class? Is this too easy? Is this too hard? You know, I've only got one third grader, you've got 60. You know, this is really important to see, you know. And then finally, as I understand it's a community, it's how are my expectations being met in relation to all the other parents? Am I the crazy one, or are we all upset? And that's really where you start looking at, you know, like, which is we want to see too. And that's when you really start having that interested parent communication. You start building a parent community, et cetera. And that's the real positive of where we need to go with this. So based upon all this, you know, we can't just keep doing the same things over and over again and expect improvement. We'll just work ourselves into the ground. We need to look at family engagement from a different perspective. And I'm also going to show this from a technology standpoint. When we think of parent engagement tools, parent engagement technology, think of Remind. Think of all those other things that out there that we know. As one principal at a middle school in Florence one told me was, Remind is like a Band-Aid when you need stitches. It covers the problem, but it really doesn't do anything. And the reason for that is most of these platforms are teacher-centric. They sit there and they talk to the parent. They actually make teachers do more work. And the teachers are already overwhelmed. We look at this, you know, One Green Apple, and we have a platform we call Opus. We make the parents the centric point on this. It's serving the family, and then everything else works. But it's not just that relationship with the teachers. If we do that, we're missing a much larger picture. There are more people involved in family engagement: the parent coordinator, the community-based organizations, IT, which makes things run, and hopefully we're at the table too, kind of like the scorekeeper, if you will, the statistician in a football game. We don't do the strategy, we can, but we can give you lots of data, if you will. And this is kind of key to see this, but this is even only the first round. From there, we even have additional people. Besides the teacher, you've got guidance counselors, faculty advisors, you know, coaches, even the homeroom teacher, if you will. Everybody has a piece touching that student and the ability to see, if you will, that parent. From the parent coordinator, you know, I'm looking at changing this role to really an administrative position much higher, almost like the principal's representative for family engagement, as well as the district, if you will. As we know, a lot of the issues in family that affect education are beyond the purview of the educational system, like housing and shelter and food and, you know, a less stressful life for the child. And a lot of this comes from a community-based organizations. And how do we make all of these things work together? That's the key. Well, that's the beauty with technology. We've always looked at point solutions for family engagement and everything else. We have, and we talk about is a family engagement management platform across the board. And basically it's communication and analytics. And we do this in a non-invasive manner behind the scenes. And what I'm going to do is just give a very quick demo of just what the parents see. And if you give me 1 second, I'm going to see if I can't share my iPhone in a second. And I'll show you what a parent sees, and you'll get the idea of how quickly this works. Because as you said, even if the parent of the at-risk child wants to help, a lot of times the technology is beyond them. The parent portal, the typical Power School parent portal, is going to be beyond their ability. So now I'm trying to screen here. New share.
And Joe, if that doesn't work, if you want to, like I can make you unpresent and then present again. And when you click on your screen, there's a little, sometimes there's a little box down on the bottom.
No. It's putting in a plugin, but I'm just seeing that the plugin is coming up.
Perfect.
Okay, wait a minute. Isn't that funny? It worked this morning, and isn't that how that always tends to work? Hold on 1 second. Let me just wait a minute. Screen. Okay, so it's still not coming up. I'm sorry about that. I guess we're working. If I'm the presenter, apparently. How did you say you wanted to do that?
I was thinking maybe if you want to unshare your screen when you do videos, sometimes one of the suggestions that we were given as part, I'm not that very technologically savvy, but
Gotcha.
I was given some different tips. And one of them is before you share, right when you're about to click on whatever screen you want to show, there might be a small box on the bottom left-hand corner that asks you to share sound and optimize video clip. If you click on that, sometimes that might help.
Well, I think it just worked.
Oh, excellent.
Nope. Okay, well, I'm going to try one more thing.
It did look like it was trying to do something, so.
Yeah, so I saw that too. I apologize to everybody, but basically, let me just tell you, is the concept is making it really easy for a parent to be able to interact, so that it becomes part of their daily routine, if you will. And our studies have been that a parent uses this to logs in at least once a day to 1.5 times a day, 3 times every 2 days, if you will. And that's really cool, because as I used to be an ice hockey coach, and it really comes down to the number of touches. And I'm seeing a question here. How is Opus designed? Did families pilot test and provide feedback? Oh yeah, so did teachers and everybody else. And there's some really neat stuff with this. If we can get this up real quick, which we are going to see if it came up this time. Okay, I'm going to do one other thing to make this work. Hold on a second. I think I do have an idea. And I apologize for this, but I think this is really important to be able to make this entire thing work.
And we always say technology is our fickle friend.
Isn't that the truth? Okay, pickle spot, and I will do this and put that. And basically what I'm going to do is hook directly to my phone, which, there we go. Connect.
Joe, what if I'm going to try to make you host? See if that makes any difference in terms of permissions. Do you think that would?
That would do it.
Let me try that. Yep. I know you're co-host now. See if maybe.